Welcome to the Brad Link Podcast, your home for expert wedding planning advice. Today we're lucky enough to have Al from Mile Marker Images here to talk about the day of logistics with photography and everything that you need to know about working well with your photographer to make sure that you get the best possible photos. So hi Al, I'm so happy to have you here with us today.
Thanks for having me. It's really nice.
Yeah, I'm really excited to be able to give this information out because I really feel like out of all the wedding vendors that you hire, the couple's going to spend more time with their photographer than they might even spend like with each other on their wedding day.
That's very true. We tell our brides and grooms when they come in to consult with us, know that if you don't have a great connection with your photographer, it will show up in your photos because we're around you. And so we don't just need you to like us. We have to have a really good working relationship so that I can tell if you're getting pictured out, so I can cut you a break and go photograph something else. Just know that relationship is going to be all day long.
Yeah, and when you work with somebody, you're able to pick up on the subtle things that are letting you know, like the bride's done with pictures right now.
Yeah.
Give her some space.
That's right.
I think that really, really helps. So we wanted to just talk about the day of logistics just in general, so that way people can get a better idea of what a photographer goes through and kind of what you're working against almost sometimes just to make sure great pictures happen, and really also what you're looking for, the good things to make great photos happen. I know when we were discussing, the first thing you mentioned is having a day of coordinator. What does that do to help you?
When you have a day of coordinator, in the best case scenario, they are running your timeline for you, and you have a timeline that you have worked out. We always ask our brides and grooms to have a timeline. It's actually in the contract, 7 days in advance, it's set. Having someone that drives that timeline, your day of coordinator, who can go into the groom's preparation area and say, all right, fellas, 10 minutes, shoes and socks on, photographer will be here. And that same person can skirt back over to the ceremony area and say, okay, florist, photographer will be over here in 20 minutes. You've got to have everything set so they can photograph, right? So all of that is most weddings are more of a production than most brides and grooms realize. And it's just like being on the stage, you have to hit your spots and you have to hit them on time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, just for an example, so if the florist isn't there and you're ready to start taking some pictures of like the groomsmen or the wedding party, what does that do for you if you don't have flowers on site yet?
If the groomsmen don't have their boutonnieres, then the photos that we've got marked on our timeline, one of two things has to happen. We have to wait until the boutonniere shows up, and that's going to push the timeline, or we usually talk to our couples beforehand and say, okay, what's the priority? If the flowers are missing, do I go ahead and shoot without boutonnieres? That's the issue. You have to make a choice on your wedding day that we don't want you to have to make. We want to take all the choices away from you as much as possible so that you get to just enjoy your wedding day. And that's where the day of coordinator is really critical, because they should be knowing your priorities and making the choices for you. For example, if somebody shows up with the cake, they don't need to knock on the door where the bride's getting ready and go, hey, where do we put the cake? That day of coordinator should be there to intercept that and say the cake goes here. Mm-hmm. I got it. And so the bride gets to enjoy her day.
Right. I'll always intercept the cake person because I do not want to touch your wedding cake. I'm so terrified of them that I'm going to break it, drop it, whatever.
Cakes and dresses.
Yeah.
Cakes and dresses.
So if I was getting everything ready for my wedding day and I was trying to put a lot of details together for you, like what we recommend for our clients is put everything in a box so you can hand it over to the photographer and say, here's the good stuff. What would you want to see in that box when you get there on wedding day?
Rings, all of them. Even the engagement ring if the bride's wearing it, because we photograph, both the wedding bands and the engagement ring. Bouquet, shoes, especially if the shoes are important. And goodness knows, man, girls love their shoes, man. The invitation, every now and again, there might be a locket or a piece of jewelry, a hair comb that is important that was, from grandmother, grandfather. Had a groom once where he had 3 family members that had passed away, and his bride made him a little series of little domed photographs and connected them, and he just carried them in his pocket. And I said, hey, tell me about things that are important to you today. And the first thing he pulled out, I'm like, great. So we get to photograph those, right? Because who knows what will happen with those things in time, but they will be photographed.
I love that, and I like to give all the paper goods in a box, so napkin, save the date, invitation.
Yep.
But I always warn my client, you might not get it back. just if a raindrop lands on it, don't bring your memento that's supposed to go in your scrapbook.
That's right.
Get an extra one.
That's
and
right.
say goodbye to it, because you may or may not get it back. If the photographer, they usually give it straight back to the client, but you can't always guarantee what happens to it after that. The next thing I was going to talk about is how important it is for hair and makeup to be done on time, because I feel like that's if somebody's going to run over as far as a professional, that's the one that I see the most of. Hair and makeup's not done.
That's right. Me too. Hair and makeup is either really good or not. There's no middle ground. There is no middle ground.
Yeah, I would say so. And part of the people, I'm like, you know what? It's expensive. Just pay it to make sure you get somebody really high quality that knows the timeline and understands.
Do you know Amanda?
With Southern Sirens.
If I walk in and she's there, man, I just sigh because I'm like, oh yeah. I'm so happy,
She'll
right?
be done on time.
And there are other people like that too. She's just one that comes to mind.
They just make stuff happen on time, and I appreciate that. So speaking of everything running on time, what happens when hair and makeup runs behind?
When anything runs behind, it pushes the entire timeline out. And we try to build in places in the timeline where we can gain that time back. But hair and makeup is really kind of critical. If you're doing bride's hair and makeup and 3 or 4 bridesmaids, 6, 7 bridesmaids, mom, grandma's hair and makeup, those all take chunks of time. And so you need to have a crew to come in and work on hair and makeup. It can't be one girl. The other mistake you can't make is you're the bride and you're going to get your hair and makeup done, and your bridesmaids think you're paying for theirs and they don't. That is the worst disaster. And I've experienced that twice. Everything gets moved. The whole timeline gets rearranged. I always say hair and makeup goes one of 2 ways. It's going to be right on time or it's going to be a disaster. Mm-hmm. And so we talk about hair and makeup, when it's going to start, when you have to be ready to get into your dress. As a photographer, we like to have a few photographs of hair and makeup, and especially if girls are having fun and there's a little champagne around or something, that's wonderful. But for me, the day starts the storytelling part when you begin to get into your dress. That's a key point on my timeline in keeping that day straight. And if it's off, everything's off.
Yeah. We had a bride once that her ceremony started 45 minutes late. That we went into ceremony time.
Yep.
And it was because she just kept not liking her hair and makeup. And her attitude was, well, you can't start without me. It's my wedding day. And she's right. We couldn't start without her. So her 100 guests sat outside in the heat and waited for 45 minutes to watch her wedding. And even though we couldn't start without her, the one thing that I couldn't stop happening after the ceremony is watching those guests leave in droves because they were hot and worn out already. Forget about the reception.
Yep.
It wasn't at an air-conditioned place anyway. They sat out in the sun for long enough and they were done. And it really, to me, her being so concerned about her hair and makeup that day and whatever frustration she was going through, she let that ruin her wedding day.
Mm-hmm. I was a second shooter at a wedding very long time ago, early in my career, and I watched a bride take a makeup towelette right after her airbrush makeup had been finished and just wipe it off and say, that's not right. I saw her do it 4 times in a row, and I was just like, oh my. And the day just was gone. Nothing happened on time. How do we convey that information to our couples? They got to understand that those are the things that will make or break your wedding day.
Mm-hmm. And I think we also know the questions to ask and red flags. Just professionals, we've seen it enough times. If there's a red flag that I'm like, oh, their wedding's going to start late because this, that, and the other, at least we already know that it's coming so we can talk to each other and make a plan for
That's right.
it. What about just the size of a wedding party? How does that impact your logistics day of?
If it's just a couple and maybe a ring bearer and a flower girl, them getting ready and hitting their spots is obviously a lot less. The parade is a smaller parade to get them marching down the same road at the same time together. But when it begins to be larger, 3, 4, 5, inevitably there will be one person in the bridesmaids and the groomsmen that late, lost, forgot a shoe, can't find my earrings, fill in the blank issue, right? And most of the time the couples, the bride and groom, they know who those people are going to be. We try to urge them, hey, you know who the people are that are going to help you run behind. Give them a different timeline that makes them be there earlier. And know that when that stuff does run behind, if after the wedding, we're going to go and do the formal bridal photos, and 2 of the groomsmen just vanish, and that happens, or a bridemaid's like, I got a blister, I got to go find a Band-Aid, it really hurts, and they just vanish, just know all of that has an impact. Mm-hmm. And it won't make the bride and groom happy.
Mm-hmm.
So
as a wedding coordinator, I call it quarantine. And I know that sounds terrible, but as soon as the ceremony's over, I put the wedding party in one room together and I say, you're under quarantine. You cannot leave this room until I get all of the guests transferred to wherever they're going to. I put the bride and groom in a separate room alone so they can have 5 minutes alone.
Yep.
And then I tell the photographer, here's where the wedding party is. Here's where the couple is.
Yep.
Wherever you want them to go, they can go. But we try to get those guests out of the way first.
During that same time, we like, if we can, take the couple immediately. If they're not quarantined, and that's a really good idea, and I've seen it done a few times, we like to just take them away from everybody. We will say, hey, this is where we're going to do couples photos later. You guys just come with us, go over here. Somebody else is herding the bridal party along. My assistant, she will just go with the bridal couple, and she'll fade back, use a bigger lens, and just capture some of those intimate moments where there's nothing really happening, because they get to just like literally drop their guard. You have to make time for that, and you have to plan for it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and we try to tell the wedding party, if you go get lip gloss and you go get your cell phone and the groomsman goes and gets their suit jacket or a beer from the bar, that's 5 minutes, 7 minutes, 5 minutes. Okay, the couple's going to be 22 minutes late to the reception now.
Yeah.
And it's the wedding party's fault. And they don't mean to.
No.
But
we also tell our brides and grooms when they get ready to do family photos, every grouping you do, you need to budget 3 to 5 minutes of time. And if it's a big grouping, you need to budget 7 to 10 minutes, because it's going to take that long to get everybody gathered and looking good. I got to make sure that if grandma is a little infirmed, how do I get her to stand up without a walker? Because grandma don't want to be in a picture with her walker.
Mm-hmm.
Things like that.
So if somebody wanted to have a conversation with you just about logistics and what they should focus on, what's some insight that you would give them?
Think clearly about the amount of time on your wedding day. It's going to go by so unbelievably fast. The other thing I would tell them, have a planner. We offer a discount if you have a planner. And a planner doesn't mean a day of coordinator. I will still give you a discount for a day of coordinator with some stipulations. Those people are critical elements to your day. That's why we offer discount. They make our lives better. But if you don't have the budget to hire someone like that, find your mean Aunt Susie who's super bossy and let her be the person that's going to drive the timeline for you. Chances are you really don't want her around, but she has to be around. Now you've given her a role and you've made her really happy, and she's probably really good at it, so it works for everybody.
That's perfect. So if a couple wanted to have that conversation with you, how can they reach out to you to get more information about mile marker images?
On my website, there's a little contact form, milemarkerimages.com. And then there's a big contact us button there. You can also text me, 865-446-0487. I'm on Facebook. You can use Facebook Messenger. I'm on Instagram. I'm on Twitter. I'm on LinkedIn if you're a little more of a professional couple. We don't charge for consultation about a timeline. If you are early in the process and trying to figure out photography and trying to figure out a timeline, we'll gladly just sit and consult with you. We do it. We would rather have you have a better wedding, even if you don't hire us.
That's awesome. That's really awesome that you offer that and that insight. So if they want more expert wedding planning advice, they can follow us at the Bride Link. But we're going to include a link directly to your website just so they can easily find you.
Thank you.
But I love that you accept text messages. That's so easy for people just to send a text and get some answers really fast. So we encourage anybody that's interested to contact Mile Marker Images and just get some more information about photography or even your timeline in general. And if you want more expert wedding planning advice, follow us at thebridalink.com.